Hello and welcome to BCU Sport TV. The Six Nation is just around the corner. As you know, it's the epitome of Northern Hemisphere's rugby. I'm joined by two special guests, of course, who've got tons of experience in rugby, and we are bringing you this production from Birmingham City University's Parkside campus. Mark Jeffries, Director of Sports here at BCU, and Philip Llewellyn, of course, Manager of Sports Scholarships students here. And Philip also coaches the Oxford University women's team. And of course, Mark, former head of rugby at Gloucester University. Gentlemen, Six Nation just around the corner. First up, your thoughts, Mark?
Oh, it's the best time of the year to be. I love the Six Nations. It's the chance that all the nations get to really show what they're about, and it's just one of the best tournaments in the world. So really excited and looking forward to it.
Phil?
Yeah, completely agree. I think in terms of the 4-year cycle, this is where everyone just really starts to kind of honing in on the World Cup, and it just adds to a definite edge to a pretty competitive tournament already. So yeah, really looking forward to the games and seeing who gets that momentum early and who comes out on top.
Well, of course, Phil coached a stint in the Irish rugby, but it's not fair having two Welshmen here. But it doesn't matter. It'll be interesting when we predict the score at the end. But let's talk about the leadership. Dan Biggar giving the captaincy first up against his Lions teammate Johnny Sexton.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. It was an interesting decision for Wayne Pivac to choose Dan Biggar. I think he's grown into the role of number 10 over the years that he's been playing. Probably wouldn't have been chosen as a captain early on in his career. Very feisty, sort of totally wears his heart on his sleeve. But I think he's matured as a player. I think he's matured as a human as well, and I think he'll do a really good job as captain for Wales. Sexton, you know, he's a class act. He's always going to be out there, sort of leading the way for Ireland. So it will be that number 10 jersey on both teams will be a really interesting battle, and it'll be interesting to see how they both go.
Absolutely, indeed. He just need to make a statement that he is still capable of playing for Ireland for the 2023 World Cup in France.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt he's Ireland's number one. You know what you're going to get with him. There's a world-class pedigree there, and all of that experience, as you say. I think the Irish are probably in a pretty fortunate position in terms of how they can manage and rotate their players through the Rugby Championship and those games. So yeah, I definitely think he's coming in fresh. He's had a decent rest between the autumn internationals and the most recent kind of European Cup games. So actually, yeah, just how far he kind of goes in the tournament. He's got maybe a little bit of history with concussions and head knocks and injuries, and he's certainly not young anymore. So I would imagine they probably take a little bit longer to get over than they did previously. So as long as they manage him, I think, well through the tournament, he's definitely going to be their talisman up front.
Absolutely, indeed. Such a stalwart for Irish rugby. Talking about Wales not having the home advantage, they haven't won in Aviva Stadium since 2015. How much it's going to run through their minds?
Yeah, the Aviva Stadium is always a difficult place to go and play, and Wales tend to have been successful when they've had the English and the Irish game at home and the three blue teams away. So it'll be interesting to see how they go out in the Aviva Stadium. It's going to be difficult because Ireland had such a good autumn international series, and you know, that win over the All Blacks was really impressive. So Wales have really got to step it up if they're going to compete and if they're going to sneak a win. You can never write the Welsh team off, because this is when they often play their best, is when they're up against the wall. But they're going to really have to pull it out of the bag if they're going to get a win in the Aviva Stadium.
Alan Wynne-Jones, Justin Tipuric, Josh Navidi, Lee Halfpenny, and few other players injured. Among them, like 700 caps among those 8 players injured. How that's going to impact?
I think that has a huge impact. it's far enough out from World Cup, you're going to get them back. So I don't think there's any kind of longer term danger. But I think in terms of just where they're at now, Pivac suddenly he's probably got a great opportunity to actually just kind of see some of the younger guys, maybe the second or third kind of ranked players, I guess, in those positions. But I really feel like that's a pretty tough away fixture to start a campaign, and history continues to show the Six Nations is about momentum. You have to win your first game. After that, it becomes a little bit easier. It's not a lot easier, but if you don't win the first one, you're suddenly looking at, third, fourth, fifth in the table, and you can slip quite quickly. So I don't envy Wales in terms of that task. I think Ireland are clear favourites, and as you say, if Wales had all of that experience, I think it's probably a coin toss. I really do. I think both teams had a good autumn and some good performances, but yeah, it's definitely moving towards kind of being in Ireland's favour at the moment.
Well, it is, by the look of the papers also, it says Ireland are in a strong commanding position, especially when they play in their home ground, Aviva Stadium. But let's talk about what sort of tactics or gameplay both the coaches will use for this game, Andy Farrell and Pivac, of course.
Yeah, I think that Wayne Pivac has been developing his style over the time that he's been with Wales, and those types of injuries don't help. Because you need those key players in those key positions to be able to really run out the style of play that you're trying to work on. I think he will revert back to a little bit more of the Gatlin style because of the players that he's missing. So I think it'll probably be a little bit tighter in the way that he plays than it was. If he had the full selection available. In terms of Farrell's way of play, certainly when you look at the New Zealand game in the autumn, the tempo that Ireland played at was tremendous, and it was hard for New Zealand to cope with that tempo. I think that if they play that tempo, it'll make it really hard for Wales. Traditionally, Ireland have sort of kicked well and played from position, which slows things down a bit, which might sort of suit Wales a little bit more. But if they play at that tempo that they played against New Zealand with, it's going to be a tough afternoon, I think, for Wales.
Well, yeah, of course, the way Ireland played against New Zealand was an astounding performance indeed. Let's talk about who will match, especially Josh Adams is going to play in the centre. And Halaholo is not playing, I think, due to injury. Him and Bandiaki will be a good clash in the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm sat in the Ireland dressing room, I'm looking at Bandiaki running down Josh Adams' channel pretty early doors, just before we came on air, looking at some stats from on Twitter and just around actually how Josh Adams struggles to defend a little bit when he's been at 13. So it probably adds a different dimension to the game. I think the weather probably starts to play a part. The Six Nations isn't known necessarily for its kind of running rugby, but jumping back to Mark's point, I think the biggest thing that Ireland did fantastically well in the autumn was just the kind of the pressure they applied to New Zealand through their defence. If they can do that to Wales, as we said, without the kind of the first choice Welsh side, suddenly it's a Welsh team playing on the back foot. And I'm looking at that team going, I'm just not sure how they get good go forward without just offering Ireland up the ball with a lot of kicking.
Yeah, 13 is probably the hardest channel to defend. And so for Josh Adams, this is going to be a real test for him. Obviously, George North did the same last year, and he did a tremendous job. So if Josh can do the same as George did, then it could work really well for Wales. But it's going to be a tough one for Josh in this game.
Absolutely, yeah, we can witness that this Saturday at Aviva Stadium. Just want to note that obviously the halfback combination is going to be crucial, and there's not much similarities or differences rather between Dan Biggar and Sexton's playing style. They don't really break the first defense quite often, unlike Finn Russell or Marcus Smith, for instance. Talking about the forwards combination, Tad Furlong found fate, and how will he face along with Ken Owens and the Henderson with Alan Beard, the vice captain?
Yeah, I think the forward battle is going to be really important. I think the ability to get go forward ball and build that tempo. I think that the Welsh forwards will try and slow that tempo down. I think that's where they'll be working as much as anything. Obviously, when we saw Tad Furlong in the Autumn Internationals playing at outside half and sidestepping people, it was because of the momentum and the pace of the game that they developed. I think Wales will be really trying hard to slow that pace down, so that they don't get that sort of open play and open ball that they did in the autumn. So the forward battle is going to be really important in this game, and probably more so from a Welsh perspective than an Irish perspective.
I think Mark's nailed that in terms of, I would say that's probably the difference where Ireland are at the moment, the ability of their forwards, certainly the tight five, to catch and pass in space. Even Cian Healy, those other guys in that squad as well, they're basically backs that are a bit bigger. So I think those skills can really make or have a very sizable impact if they can get front foot ball. But I think they've also got quality carriers across their front eight to enable them to get that go forward. So if it starts to open up a little bit, it could be a long day.
Well, there we go. Two Welshmen talking, in fact, on behalf of Irish perspective. And finally, on this preview, I think Ireland going to win by 12. Your thoughts?
It'll depend on how quick the Irish are able to play it. I think Ireland will win. I hope it's a little bit closer. But maybe that's hope rather than prediction.
I noticed Mark didn't give a number there, but I'll stick my neck out. I'm going to say it's first game, opening game. I think it's going to be closer than that. I think Ireland by 7.
Well, Ireland by 7. That's the first game preview of Wales versus Ireland at Aviva Stadium this Saturday. And join us for the England versus Scotland, the Calcutta Cup preview.